Well, boys and girls, we're back to the last chapter, chapter 22, A Warm Wind. Mr. Ripple almost didn't make it through the last chapter. Charlotte, giving her life for Wilbur, is a show of true friendship. And so, Wilbur came home to his beloved Muir pile in the barn cellar. His was a strange homecoming. Around his neck, he wore a Medal of Honor. In his mouth, he held a sack of spider's eggs. There is no place like home, Wilbur thought, as he placed Charlotte's 514 unborn children carefully in a safe corner. The barn smelled good. His friends, the sheep and the geese, were glad to see him back. The geese gave him a noisy welcome. "Congratulations," they cried. "Nice work." Mr. Zugerman took the medal from Wilbur's neck and hung it on a nail over the paper, where visitors could examine it. Wilbur himself could look at it whenever he wanted to. And the days that followed, he was very happy. He grew to a great size. He no longer worried about being killed, for he knew that Mr. Zugerman would keep him as long as he lived. Wilbur often thought about Charlotte. A few strands of her old red still hung in the doorway. Every day, Wilbur would stand and look at the torn, empty red, and a lump would come to his throat. No one had ever had such a friend, so affectionate, so loyal, and so skilled. The autumn days grew shorter. Lurvy brought the squash and pumpkin in from the garden and piled them on the barn floor, where they wouldn't get nipped on frosty nights. The maples and birches turned bright colors and the wind shook them, and they dropped their leaves one by one to the ground. Under the wild apple trees in the pasture, the red little apples lay thick on the ground, and the sheep gnawed them, and the geese gnawed them, and the foxes came in the night and sniffed them. One evening, just before Christmas snow began falling, it covered house and barn and fields and woods. Wilbur had never seen snow before. When morning came, he went out and plowed the drift in the yard. For the fun of it, Fern and Avery arrived, dragging a sled. They coasted down the lane and out into the frozen pond in the pasture. "Coasting is the most fun there is," said Avery. "The most fun there is," retorted Fern, "is what the Ferris wheel stops. When the Ferris wheel stops and Henry and I are in the top car. And Henry makes the car swing and we can see everything for miles and miles and miles." "Goodness, are you still thinking about that old Ferris wheel?" said Avery in disgust. "The fair was gone weeks and weeks ago." "I think about it all the time," said Fern, picking snow from her ear. "After Christmas, the thermometer dropped to 10 below zero. Cold settled on the world. The pasture was bleak and frozen. The cows stayed in the barn all the time now, except on Sunday mornings when they went out and stood in the barnyard in the lee of the snow pile. The sheep stayed near the barn too for protection. When they were thirsty, they ate snow. The geese hung around the barnyard the way boys hang around a drugstore. And Mr. Zugerman fed them corn and turnips to keep them cheerful. Many, many, many thanks, they always said when they saw food coming. Templeton moved indoors when winter came. His ratty home under the pig trough was too chilly, so he fixed himself a cozy nest in the barn behind the grain bins. He lined it with bits of dirty newspapers and rags, and whenever he found a trinket or a keepsake, he carried it home and stored it there. He continued to visit Wilbur 3 times a day, exactly at mealtime, and Wilbur kept his promise he had made. Wilbur let the rat eat first, and when Templeton couldn't hold another mouthful, Wilbur would eat. As a result of the overeating, Templeton grew bigger and fatter than any rat you ever saw. He was gigantic. He was as big as a young woodchuck. The old sheep spoke to him about his size one day. You would live longer, said the old sheep, if you ate less. Who wants to live forever? Sneered the rat. I'm naturally a heavy eater, and I get untold satisfaction from the pleasure of the feast. He patted his stomach, grinning at the sheep, and crept upstairs to lie down. All winter Wilbur watched over Charlotte's eggs as though he was guarding his own children. He had scooped out a special place in the manure for the sack, next to the board fence. On very cold nights, he lay so that his breath would warm him. For Wilbur, nothing in life was so important as this small round object. Nothing else mattered. Particularly, he awaited the end of winter and the coming of the little spiders. Life is always a rich and steady time when you are waiting for something to happen or to hatch. The winter ended at last. I heard the frogs today, said the old sheep one evening. Listen, you can hear them now. Wilbur stood still and cocked his ears. From the pond, the shrill chorus came the voices of hundreds of little frogs. Springtime, said the old sheep thoughtfully. Another spring. As she walked away, Wilbur saw a new lamb following her. It was only a few hours old. The snows melted and ran away. The streams and ditches bubbled and chattered with rushing water. A sparrow with a streaky breast arrived and sang. The light strengthened, the mornings came sooner. Almost every morning there was another new lamb in the sheepfold. The goose was sitting on 9 eggs. The sky seemed a wider and a warm wind blew. The last remaining strands of Charlotte's old lamb floated away and vanished. One fine sunny morning after breakfast, Wilbur stood watching his precious sack. He wasn't thinking of anything much. As he stood there, he noticed something move. He stepped closer and stared. A tiny spider crawled from the sack. It was no bigger than a grain of sand, no bigger than the head of a pin. Its body was gray, with a black stripe underneath. Its legs were gray and tan. It looked just like Charlotte. Wilbur trembled all over when he saw it. The little spider waved at him, and Wilbur looked more closely. 2 more little spiders crawled out and waved. They climbed around and round on the sack, exploring that new world. Then 3 more little spiders. Then 8. Then 10. Charlotte's children were here at last. Wilbur's heart pounded. He began to squeal. Then he raced in circles, kicking manure in the air. Then he turned it back. Then he planted his front feet and came to a stop in front of Charlie's children. "Hello there," he said. The first spider said hello, but its voice was so small Wilbur couldn't hear it. "I'm an old friend of your mother's," said Wilbur. "I'm glad to see you. Are you all right? Is everything all right?" The little spiders waved their forelegs at him. Wilbur could see by the way they acted that they were glad to see him. "Is there anything I can get you? Is there anything you need?" The young spiders just waved. For several days and several nights, they crawled here and there, up and down, around and around, waving at Wilbur, trailing tiny draglines behind them, and exploring their home. There were dozens and dozens of them. Wilbur couldn't count them, but he knew that he had a great many new friends. They grew quite rapidly. Soon each was as big as a BB shot. They made tiny webs near the sack. Then came a quiet morning when Mr. Zugelman opened the door to the north. A warm draft of rising air blew softly through the barn cellar. The air smelled of the damp earth, of the spruce woods, of the sweet springtime. The tiny spiders felt the warm updraft. One spider climbed to the top of the fence, and then it did something that came as a great surprise to Wilbur. The spider stood on its head, pointed its feathers in the air, and let loose a cloud of fine silk. The silk formed a balloon. As Wilbur watched, the spider let go of the fence and rose into the air. "Goodbye," it said as it sailed through the doorway. "Wait a minute," cried Wilbur. "Where do you think you're going?" But the spider was already out of sight. Then another baby spider crawled to the top of the fence, stood on its head, and made a balloon and sailed away. Then another spider. Then another. The air was soon filled with tiny balloons, each balloon carrying a spider. Wilbur was frantic. Charlie's babies were disappearing at a great rate. "Goodbye, come back, children," he cried. "Goodbye," they called. "Goodbye, goodbye." At last, one little spider took time enough to stop and talk to Wilbur before making his balloon. "We're leaving here on the warm-up draft. This is our moment for setting forth. We are aeronauts, and we are going out into the world to make webs outside. But where?" asked Wilbur. "Wherever the wind takes us. High, low, near, far, east, west, north, south. We take to the breeze. We go as we please." "Are all of you going?" asked Wilbur. "You can't all go. I would be left alone with no friend. Your mother wouldn't want that to happen, I'm sure." The air was now so full of balloonists the barn cellar looked almost as though a mist had gathered. Balloons by the dozens were rising, circling and drifting away through the door, setting off on a gentle wind. Cries of "goodbye, goodbye, goodbye" came weakly to Wilbur's ear. He couldn't bear to watch anymore. In sorrow, he sank to the ground and closed his eyes. This seemed like the end of the world, to be deserted by Charlotte's children. Wilbur cried himself to sleep. When he woke, it was late afternoon. He looked at the egg sack. It was empty. He looked into the air. The balloonists were gone. Then he walked dreamily to the doorway where Charlotte's lab used to be. He was standing there thinking of her when he heard a small voice. "Salutations," it said. "I'm up here." "So am I," said another tiny voice. "So am I," said a third voice. "Three of us are staying. We like the place, and we like you." Wilbur looked up. At the top of the doorway, 3 small webs were being constructed. On each web, working busily, was one shorter starter. "Can I take this to mean," asked Wilbur, "that you have definitely decided to live here in the barn cellar and that I am going to have 3 friends?" "You can indeed," said the spiders. "What are your names, please?" asked Wilbur, trembling with joy. "I'll tell you my name," replied the first little spider, "if you'll tell me why you're trembling." "I'm trembling with joy," said Wilbur. "Then my name is Joy," said the first spider. "What was your mother's middle initial?" asked the second spider. "A," said Wilbur. "Then my name is Aaron," said the spider. "How about me?" asked the third spider. "Will you just pick out a nice, sensible name for me? Something not too long, not too fancy, and not too dumb." Wilbur thought hard. "Nellie," he suggested. "Fine. I like that very much," said the third spider. "You may call me Nellie." She daintily fastened her orb line to the next spoke of the web. Wilbur's heart brimmed with happiness. He felt that he should make a short speech on this very important occasion. "Joy, Aaron, Nellie," he began, "welcome to the barn cellar. You have chosen a hollow doorway from which to string your webs. I think it is only fair to tell you that I was devoted to your mother. I owe my very life to her. She was brilliant, beautiful, and loyal to the end. I shall always treasure her memory. To you, her daughters, I pledge my friendship forever and ever." "I pledge mine," said Joy. "I do too," said Aaron. "I do too. So do I," said Nellie, who had just managed to catch a small gnat. It was a happy day for Wilbur, and many more happy, tranquil days followed. As time went on, and the months and years came and went, he was never without friends. Fern did not come regularly to the barn anymore. She was growing up and was careful to avoid childish things like sitting on a milk stool near a pig pen. But Charlotte's children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, year after year, lived in the doorway. Each spring, there were new little spiders hatching out and to take the place of the old. Most of them sailed away on their balloons, but always 2 or 3 stayed and set up housekeeping in the doorway. Mr. Zuckerman took fond care of Wilbur all the rest of his days, and the pig was often visited by friends and admirers, for nobody ever forgot the year of his triumph and the miracles of the weather. Life in the barn was very good. Night and day, winter and summer, spring and fall, dull days and bright days. It was the best place to be through. Wilbur was this warm, delicious cellar with the groundless geese, the changing seasons, the heat of the sun, the passage of the swallows, and the nearness of the rats, the sameness of the sheep, the love of the spiders, the smell of the manure, and the glory of everything. Wilbur never forgot Charlotte, although he loved her children and grandchildren dearly. Noises of the cow, noises of the new spiders, even kept every quiet took her place in his heart. She was in a class by herself. It is not often that someone comes along who is a true friend and a good rider. Charlotte was both. The end of a wonderful book. Actually, boys and girls, this is the first time I've ever read this book. And it was a great book. Thank y'all for letting me share it with y'all.